Hello and welcome to the online Tennis in the Parks Peer Advisor Orientation. My name is Eric and I'll be your host for this little online tour. So let's get started. Okay, first here's what we want to accomplish in this little presentation. First, basically we want to answer these questions. What is Tennis in the Parks? What is the purpose and vision of the Peer Advisor program? As a peer advisor, what are you supposed to do? Where do you go if you need help or more information? And how do you communicate what you are doing as a peer advisor? So hopefully in the next 15 minutes or so, we'll accomplish those things. So first of all, what is Tennis in the Parks? Tennis in the Parks is a partnership between the United States Tennis Association, the USTA, and the National Recreation and Park Association, which we'll often refer to as the NRPA. And its purpose is basically to help public parks and recreation agencies engage more youth and adults in physically active lifestyles through tennis. It has basically three prongs to it, and that is infrastructure, programs, and advocacy. The way Tennis in the Parks works, at least on the USTA side, there is a national staff manager and also one more employee, so two people devoted to Tennis in the Parks. And there is also a national committee that is also devoted to Tennis in the Parks, and that's going to be your primary interaction is with the committee. You can read the committee's charge here, but it is basically to promote tennis in public parks by working with the NRPA. One of the cool things about Tennis in the Parks initiative is that Billie Jean King, who grew up on public parks herself, is the honorary chair of the Tennis in the Parks Committee. So occasionally she will write things for us or help us out. She's always a great advocate for tennis in public parks. So let's look at our kind of three prongs here. Again, that's programming, infrastructure, and advocacy. On the programming side, the goal here is to essentially promote USTA programming. So for example, right now that's things like 10 and under tennis, play days, junior team tennis, recreational coach workshops, 10 and under tennis workshops, league tennis, and flex leagues. So we're basically trying to promote this type of programming in public parks. What a lot of public parks are most interested in, quite honestly, is the infrastructure. And here our goal is to improve tennis infrastructure nationwide, and right now that is a specific emphasis on 10 and under tennis. So that's going to be building permanent smaller courts, 36-foot, 60-foot court, and or putting the blended permanent lines down on existing 78-foot courts. So USTA will provide technical assistance to any project, and that technical assistance is free. And there is also funding, and that is a competitive grant process to projects. Okay, just really quick, because the funding is of interest to so many parks and rec agencies, there are three basic categories of grant funding available, and those kind of are in order of the extent. Category 1 is basic improvements. That's up to $4,000 that needs to be matched dollar for dollar. Category 2 is resurfacing of existing courts. That's up to 20% of the total project cost with a $35,000 max. And Category 3 is brand new construction or existing facility reconstruction and expansion. And again, that is also up to 20% of the total project cost with the $50,000 max. These are competitive grants, but there is money out there available, and it has been well used in public parks across the nation. Okay, just to give you some ideas of some of the things that money has gone to, here we have Fort Worth, Texas, installed 12 permanent 36-foot courts. Here we have Surprise, Arizona, and you see the blended lines here for the 60-foot courts, and also going sideways, I believe we have the 36-foot lines there. So lots of money right now available for putting these lines in at both the national and sectional level. And I mention that because that's something that a lot of the contacts you will have will be interested in. And the final prong is advocacy, and this is basically providing a voice to advocate for tennis programs and facilities in public parks across the nation. We work with the Big Serve, which is another USTA initiative focused specifically on advocacy, and that includes things such as an online advocacy toolkit, advocacy consultants who are in some ways performing a similar job as the peer advisors, but with a focus on advocacy. And then the one very specific to tennis in the parks is the NRPA Legislative Forum. That's where we go with the National Recreation and Park Association to Capitol Hill in DC and advocate at the national level for tennis programming. So what's a peer advisor? A peer advisor is an enthusiastic and experienced provider of tennis services in local parks and recreation agencies that serve as a resource to other parks and recreation agencies, I'm having a hard time saying that, in support of tennis in the parks initiatives. So basically the background here is we recognized that it takes a village, so to speak, of multiple people out there promoting tennis, and that the most useful, best resource is also a colleague or a peer who is working with you. So what we wanted to do, and I think this will cue the next slide here, is establish a network of peer advisors across the country that's going to work locally to help grow tennis in parks and recreation agencies. Our first goal is a peer advisor in every section. I believe we're almost there, and ultimately we want one peer advisor in each state. Again, that is to provide a network of people at the local level that's essentially helping to spread tennis programming in parks and recreation agencies. And that's where you come in. So what's the role of a peer advisor? What are we looking for you to do? And I see this as kind of also a three-prong attack. One is to be a resource and mentor to other parks and rec agencies. Oftentimes, as you all probably well know, as the person in charge of tennis in a parks and rec agency has no tennis background, no tennis experience. You were chosen because you were doing an excellent job of tennis programming, and we want you to be able to share that knowledge with others. So what happens here is sometimes all the time your information is out there. We have a web page that lists you. Sometimes we'll get calls and we'll direct people to you. And we just basically want you to serve as a resource. So if someone calls and asks you questions, just answer those to the best of your ability. Second, we want you to be a model. And so we want you to be running great tennis programs, and that's the reason you were chosen. So it's not something I would stress about. And finally, we want you to be an ambassador, so this is a little more proactive rather than reactive of spreading tennis programs. So let me talk about those briefly in detail, if that makes sense. So first, as mentioned, we want you to be a resource and a mentor. This was kind of the original vision of the peer advisor program, that this would be your role to basically respond to others. And it is still part of your role. We've kind of expanded that in large part because of the great work that many of you are already doing. But basically we ask you to respond to people if they inquire and help them out with their tennis programming. Obviously we realize you're all very busy and doing great things, but just, promptly, these are some basic business guidelines of what we expect from you. Okay. Prong 2 is we want you to be a model of tennis programming. So we want you to be doing great things that others can see, and we want you to be kind of at the forefront of USTA initiatives and programming. So for example, now 10 and under tennis is the big push. So here we have a picture of a 10 and under tennis program. We see kids using a yellow ball. We see kids standing in line. This kid looks really excited. That kid behind him is picking his nose. So obviously this is not the type of programming we hope you are doing, and we're pretty confident that you're not. So let's get rid of this kind of bad example really quickly. So here we have the kind of program we'd like to see and think we do see from you. We see the modified equipment, nets and balls. We see lots of things going on, kids being active and playing tennis. So what we are hoping is that you are modeling this type of programming for others to see, and we know you are. And finally, we want you to be an ambassador of tennis programs. So we want you to actively promote tennis through your State Parks and Recreation Association, as well as your own personal contacts. So we want you to be as pumped up about tennis as these guys are. And again, this is why you were chosen, so we have no doubt that you are pumped up. We would just love to see you take kind of an active role through your state contacts and local contacts in doing that. So some examples of things peer advisors have done in this role is they have presented at State Park and Recreation Association conferences, oftentimes in connection with USTA staff, if you're interested in doing that. They have published articles in State Park and Rec Association newsletters or e-newsletters, and they have also published articles in local newspapers or local blogs. So those are just some examples of things you can do in your role as a peer advisor and ambassador. So what are your resources? How do you know what to do and how do you get information? Number one is yourself. As I mentioned several times here, you were chosen because you were doing a great job. We trust you. We want you to share that knowledge, and we want you to spread that knowledge. Number two is SharePoint, which is an online resource I'm going to talk about in detail in a second. Number three is your other peer advisors. All of you are doing wonderful things and are great resources to each other. USTA staff, and then members of the Tennis in the Parks Committee. So just a little more detail on each of these, except for yourself, which I've talked about a little bit. So SharePoint is simply a private online resource meant to provide helpful information to you. All peer advisors have access to this, and we regularly update it with new information. So first of all, if you do not know what SharePoint is or how to get there, let me know so I can make sure you do have that information. Let's take a look. This is what SharePoint looks like. You will log in and you'll get a page like this. So what I want to draw your attention to here is on the left side, we have documents. So there are notes from our conference calls. The rest is largely information that has come from you about what kind of information would be helpful. So we have information about indoor structures. We have presentations. So if you're looking at doing a presentation at your state park and recreation agency or someplace else, here are presentations that others have done, so there's no need for you to reinvent the wheel. Participation information about the facility assistance program, partnership agreements with your community tennis associations, if that's something you're looking to do or looking to advise others to do. Here are examples of agreements that are already in place. And on the right side, we have some websites that are helpful. So that is SharePoint. Again, if you do not know how to get there, please don't hesitate to let me know. Okay. Your next resource is your peer advisor network, so your fellow peer advisors. So we're still in SharePoint, and I just want to bring your attention to one thing here as my arrow pops in. Tip peer advisor contacts. So once you're in this page, you click on that link, and it's going to show you your network advisors and their contact information. I'm not going to show that here because I don't want that on YouTube, but that's where that is. USTA staff is also a resource. Most, if not all of you, received a recommendation from your section or district office. So obviously you already have contacts there and you know how to use them. David Slade is the National Manager of Tennis in the Parks, and he also works with John Thompson. And I know they are also happy to answer any of your questions. And then anybody on the Tennis in the Parks Committee is certainly a resource for you. This is me. It's a few years ago, but that is me, so any of us are always happy to answer your questions. So the next thing is we want to know what you're doing, and the reason we want to know that is a couple-fold. A, to share your success stories with others. B is to just kind of get a pulse of what's going on, and C is to help us help you. So if we know what you're doing, we can see where we can help you more. So the way we do that, now, for those of you who have been around for a while know, we used to do this on SharePoint, but that seemed to get a little complicated and wasn't being actively used. So now what we're doing, we're sending out a twice-a-year online survey. It's largely check boxes, so hopefully fairly simple and not a huge amount of your time. So we're going to ask you to fill that out twice a year. And also we do quarterly conference calls, and this is just a chance for us to chat, catch up, share stories, share frustrations, ask for information, etc. So those are the two ways where asking for information to know what's going on. And finally, because I have a limit on time on YouTube, I just want to thank you all for doing what you do. You guys are and girls are truly the ones who are growing tennis at the public local level. If you didn't know, over 70% of tennis is played in public parks, and this is a huge opportunity to grow tennis. I grew up a public park kid, so I feel very passionate about it, as I know you do. As I talk to you and hear from you on our conference calls and emails, I am amazed and astounded at the wonderful things you are doing, and I am so grateful and thankful for each of you. If you have any questions ever, do feel free to let any of the Tennis in the Parks committee members know, including myself. We are always here to help you. So thank you. If you have any questions, let me know, and have a wonderful day.